Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Mr. Vampire, a Hong Kong action comedy horror flick from 1985 that has spawned a number of sequels and spin-offs. I do plan on covering some of the other Mr. Vampire films sporadically over the next few months on this channel. I was initially going to do one review a week in consecutive weeks, but I think that would be a little bit of an overload for most people, so I'll space them out a little bit more, but I will get to most of them. This video, in this one, we're looking at the original film, which many fans consider to be the best of the franchise. So the following plot synopsis is paraphrased from Wikipedia. Master Cao is a Taoist priest who performs magic and maintains control over spirits and vampires. Together with his inept students, he resides in a large house protected from the spiritual world with talismans and amulets. One day, he accepts an assignment from a wealthy businessman, Yam, to remove Yam's deceased father from his grave and rebury him, with the hopes that doing so will bring more prosperity to the family. But after opening the coffin, Cao notices that the body is still intact, even though it has been years since he died. So realizing, in some sense, that this is a vampire, he orders it to be moved to his house for further study and to be subject to spells that will prevent it from reawakening. So unfortunately, the vampire does awaken. He escapes, breaks out, and begins killing people. So one of the most defining features of Mr. Vampire is its portrayal of Chinese vampires. Although the term vampire may not be entirely accurate in this case, I think the term that is used is jiangshi, which, they are very different from Western depictions of vampires. So the term vampire might not be really accurate here. But the big difference that you'll notice is that these reanimated corpses extend their arms and they hop. They hop around and they move that way. And they can move pretty fast. You'd be surprised. At first, this seems kind of goofy when you first see it, but some of these monsters, man, are deadly and incredibly difficult to take down. There are times where the protagonists are simply attempting to survive the attacks from this vampire thing, and eventually the vampire, if they escape enough, it'll grow frustrated and just kind of retreat into the night, but then it returns the following night and attacks again. So I was pretty impressed with the tough-as-nails portrayal of the jiangshi. Now, the other major advantage of Mr. Vampire is that the design of these Chinese hopping vampires results in fight scenes that are unique and distinguishable from anything you would see from any other film industry. The good guys bring a combination of magic, kung fu, and special weaponry and items into battle. Stuff like paper talismans, black ink, mirrors, and of course, sticky rice. You can't forget the sticky rice. So the blend of all these elements is really refreshingly different and very entertaining. When I first saw Mr. Vampire, I was captivated because I had never seen something quite like this before in a movie. There was the Sammo Hung film called Encounters of the Spooky Kind that I think was released in 1980, but it had him fighting some jiangshi in there, but I had not yet seen that movie. So Mr. Vampire was my first experience with this kind of thing, and it made quite an impression on me. Now, going into this, you need to remember that this is a genre bender that includes a healthy dose of comedy. Now, this has kind of an eventful opening when two goofballs let some vampire corpses run loose and their master gets the situation under control. Then we get some quaint comedy involving misunderstandings. There's a side plot involving a lady ghost as well, which is used for comedic purposes. She attempts to seduce one of the men in the film. But this does a good job of focusing on the vampire-related conflicts for most of the runtime. And whenever it does veer off course, so to speak, into a side plot, like the lady ghost, it's still a lot of fun to watch. In fact, a few of the most memorable moments involve the lady ghost. So it's a pretty fun movie. The cast does have a few recognizable faces. You have Siu-ho who will be familiar to some audiences because he was Jet Li's buddy in Fist of Legend. He was also in The Seventh Curse, which I reviewed recently, and the recent film, fairly recent film, Rigor Mortis, if you've seen that. Moon Lee has a supporting role, but she does not exhibit her fighting talents that made her popular, but she is very charming and fun to watch. And then we have Ching Ying Lan, who plays the awesome Taoist priest. These Jiangxi films became his bread and butter over time, and it makes sense because he does such a good job in the lead role in these films. He's wise, he's likable, and he can hold his own against even the most vicious hopping vampires. And it's not that easy to take these guys down. So, and he would also appear in a handful of the sequels and spin-offs to Mr. Vampire, and some fans get pretty disappointed in certain cases when he does not show up in these movies. So, he made such a good impression with Mr. Vampire that he became inseparable from this kind of film, which is pretty interesting. As an added bonus, there's some spooky atmosphere at times. Hong Kong films from this era typically used a bright blue lighting for films that they had horror-related content, so you get some of that here. So really, there's not a whole lot of negatives to Mr. Vampire, in my opinion. If you're in the process of exploring Hong Kong cinema from the 1980s, Mr. Vampire is basically a must-watch. It really is. It's considered a classic from the decade. It's creative, it's fun, and even influential. It's widely available on DVD and Blu-ray, so check it out. And as always, we'll see you next time.